Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaraweera, speaking to students of Royal College Colombo, commented on the present state of affairs.
So putting money into the market is not the solution. We have to somehow try to save as much dollars as possible, not to spend on unnecessary things. I think all ministers, MPs, everyone must stop bringing these fancy imported cars. I'm not going to allow them to do so in the next year. And then also we may have to reduce your fancy imported goods for a while. That will help. If you can stop buying, I don't know, fancy bottles of wine or cheese or whatever you eat at home, and stick to the local products for a while. We can hold it down, but as I keep saying, it is not the end of the world. The economy is not going to crash. In a way, this is a good point for us to expedite our program to make Sri Lanka into an export-oriented economy, because the exporters are doing extremely well, because when the dollar goes, they are getting much more than before. Migrant workers are doing well, because whatever money they've been sending home is worth more. So there are sections who are benefiting, but the others will have to tighten their belts for a few months until the situation gets better. But I can't tell you when it will get better, because yesterday, for example, the fuel price went up to $81. And I saw in CNN saying they were predicting if the US-Iran situation gets worse, it could go up to $100. So we'll have to face that. We'll have to face that. And the fuel formula is coming on the 10th again. So prepare yourselves.
Although the Minister of Finance asked the general public to tighten their belts, isn't it the ministers themselves who should be doing so by setting an example? Today, Minister Sarath Fonseca distributed vehicles worth over 244 million rupees to departments under his ministry. Have the ministers who advise the public cut down on their own foreign travels, luxury vehicles and lavish vacations? The International Monetary Fund says the Central Bank of Sri Lanka's efforts should be supported by a strong 2019 budget, adding greater revenue mobilization can make space for critical spending needs, including broader coverage of vulnerable families under the social safety net based on well-defined section criteria. The IMF says the mission made significant progress towards reaching a staff-level agreement with the government on completing the 5th review of the EFF. Thus, it was suggested that tax policies should be applied in a more constructive manner. The mission commended the successful implementation of the fuel pricing reforms and encouraged the introduction of an automatic price mechanism for electricity.
If I had any recommendation to make to Sri Lanka on this score, I would go back to development banking. You see, this is one of the worst things that was ever done in Sri Lanka, the privatization of the NDB and the DFCC. All the successful countries I mentioned had one policy, and one policy only, that was the absolute bedrock of everything they did, and that was development banking, state development banking. The thing they feared was state development banking, because that is the core. That's the core. Once you get state development banks, then you're in a totally different ballgame. You see, remember when they came in after the assassination of President Premadasa, the first thing the IMF asked for was privatization of DFCC and NDB. DFCC and NDB were the two most efficient banks in Sri Lanka. Why did they want them privatized? And after they finished with the privatization, did they go after the Bank of Ceylon? No, they didn't. Did they go after any of the other banks? No, they didn't. They didn't go after the People's Bank. They were obvious candidates. Why did they go after DFCC and NDB? I don't blame the foreigners. I don't blame the Western countries. This is an economic war. Who do I blame? I say our people. If you forgive me for saying that, I blame our people.
MP Udaya Gamanpilla today filed an appeal under the Right to Information Act to the Ministry of Finance, seeking information on the fuel price formula.
ඊයේ මාධ්‍ය හමුවකදී මුදල් අමාත්‍ය
At an event last evening, Minister of Finance Mangala Samaraweera said fuel prices are expected to rise in the near future. As near as the 10th of October, we have a right to know as to why we pay such high prices for fuel. On behalf of the Finance Ministry, the Information Officer of the Ministry of National Policy says revelation of the fuel price formula will cause negative effects to the national economy and therefore cannot be revealed to the public. We made an appeal to the Director General of the government's Monetary Policies Department today. While speaking to the Director General, it was envisaged that he too will decline our request. If he does decline our request, we will proceed to the Right to Information Commission. If they too reject it, we will seek assistance from the Supreme Court.
ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨාධිකරණය